Two 12-year-old girls were stopped from boarding their flight, even with every document in hand. What the airline didn't know, their dad was the CEO, and he was about to shut the whole gate down. It started with a simple plan. Aaliyah and Amira Whitfield were going to fly from Des Moines to Indianapolis to visit their grandmother, just the two of them. They were excited, 12 years old, wearing matching tracksuits, rolling their glittery carry-ons behind them like mini pros. Their mom had triple-checked every document: birth certificates, IDs, notarized permission letters, even the backup contacts for both parents. Everything was tucked neatly in a zipped folder in Aaliyah's backpack. But at gate B7, things turned fast. The girls approached the counter like they'd practiced, smiled, said their names clearly, handed over the folder. The woman behind the desk, badge said K. Reinhardt, frowned almost immediately. She flipped through the folder, paused, then looked back up. "Where are your parents?" she asked. Aaliyah answered, "Our mom dropped us off at the airport. We're flying to see our grandma in Indianapolis." Reinhardt's lips tightened. "And who packed your bags?" Amira blinked. We did. Last night." The agent didn't smile. She motioned to a man behind her, tall, buzz-cut, security vest. His name tag said B. Clay. He stepped in, leaning over the counter. "Girls, we're going to need to ask you a few more questions," he said. "Something's not lining up here." That's when the air shifted. Passengers behind them started noticing. One mom with a stroller whispered something to her husband. A businessman adjusted his tie and tried not to stare. Aaliyah held the folder out again. "We have everything we need. Our dad is—" But Clay interrupted. "Let's step aside. You're not boarding just yet." He led them to a bench off to the side, in clear view of the gate area. Reinhardt followed. They started whispering to each other behind the counter, checking a screen, making phone calls. Aaliyah sat stiffly, arms crossed. Amira clutched her stuffed panda, quietly humming a song from their favorite TikTok clip. More than anything, they were confused. "We didn't do anything," Amira whispered. "I know," Aaliyah said, her voice dry. "I think they think we're lying." Amira frowned. "But why would they think that?" "I don't know." The gate was boarding another flight, and people walked past them, some giving the girls puzzled looks, others avoiding eye contact altogether. Then came the questions. Reinhardt came back with a clipboard. "Who is your legal guardian?" "Our parents," Aaliyah said. "And where do they live?" "In Ames, Iowa." "Do you know their phone numbers by heart?" "Yes." "What's your father's name?" "Donovan Whitfield." That name should have meant something, but it didn't, not to them. Reinhardt scribbled something, then looked at them again. "Do you know what your father does for work?" "He works in an office," Amira said. Aaliyah added, "He runs a company, an airline company." Reinhardt raised an eyebrow. "Which airline?" This one. The one we're flying." For the first time, Reinhardt's expression cracked. Clay returned, glancing at her screen. They exchanged a look that wasn't quite confusion, wasn't quite concern, but it was something. Still, no apology, no boarding passes, no movement. They kept the girls there for another 10 minutes, 20. People were watching now. An elderly woman asked if they were okay. Reinhardt told her firmly to mind her own business. Then Aaliyah's hands started to shake. She pulled out her phone, unlocked it with her thumb, and scrolled to Dad. "Should I call him?" she asked quietly. Amira didn't answer. She just nodded. The call connected on the third ring. "Hey, baby, you girls on the plane yet?" Donovan's voice came in warm and distracted. "No," Aaliyah said. They won't let us board." "What? Why not?" "They said something's off. They made us sit here. We have the folder, everything. But they said something's not right." She was trying not to cry, but her voice was cracking now. "They asked who you were and where you work." There was a long pause on the other end. Donovan's voice dropped low. "Put me on speaker, right now." But just when they thought it couldn't get worse, one of the agents made a call that would change everything. Aaliyah held the phone up, thumb hovering over the speaker icon. Her hands were trembling, but she tapped it. The moment Donovan Whitfield's voice filled the air, it felt like the tension in that little corner of the terminal shifted, though neither agent realized why just yet. "This is Donovan Whitfield. I need to know who's in charge at gate B7, he said, calm but firm. Reinhardt narrowed her eyes at the phone. Sir, I'm Karen Reinhardt, gate lead. The girls are fine. We're just verifying some things before we can allow them to board. Donovan's tone dropped half a register. Are you aware of who I am, Ms. Reinhardt? No, sir, she said quickly. This is just protocol. We've had incidents in the past. I'm the interim CEO of Traverse Air Group, the parent company of Jetspan Airlines, which you work for. The pause was immediate. Reinhardt didn't move. Donovan continued, You've detained my daughters, who are fully documented unaccompanied minors. They've been sitting at that gate for over 20 minutes while flights continue boarding around them. You didn't call your supervisor. You didn't call the family contacts listed. You didn't check corporate policy. You called security. Aaliyah looked up at Reinhardt's face. The woman's eyes darted to Clay, whose jaw seemed to tighten just slightly. Sir, I'm going to have to... No, you're going to call your gate manager. Then you're going to call the airport's customer operations director. I'll be on the line when you do. If they're not on site in 10 minutes, I'm escalating this to legal and pulling your entire shift log. Clay stepped in, trying to take control. Mr. Whitfield, I'm with airport security. Are you contracted or employed by the airport? Donovan interrupted. I'm part of a security subcontractor. Then your badge doesn't mean anything to me. Hand the phone back to my daughters. Clay stood still for a second, unsure of what to do. Reinhardt finally handed the phone back to Aaliyah without a word. She placed it on her lap, still on speaker. Daddy? Amira asked quietly. I'm here. You're both okay. Just stay put. At that moment, everything around the gate started to buzz. Not audibly, but in energy. Reinhardt left to make a call. Clay stepped back and started talking into his shoulder mic. People were watching. A man in a blazer looked over from the priority boarding line, then did a double take when he heard the name Donovan Whitfield. The girls didn't know it yet, but their father's name had just triggered a series of calls inside the terminal, starting with the Traverse Air Regional Director, then the Jetspan Airlines Director of Compliance, then airport leadership. And things started moving fast. 15 feet away, a young woman in a blazer with a Jetspan badge came speed-walking toward the gate. She was followed by an older man with a clipboard and a headset. Reinhardt met them at the gate, whispering fast, gesturing toward the girls. The woman glanced their way and nodded once. Aaliyah noticed her. She whispered to Amira, I think someone's here now. For real. Meanwhile, Donovan was on a second call, toggling between speaker and mute. He was speaking directly to Jetspan's president of passenger services. They weren't just negligent, he said. They made a judgment call based on how my daughters look. Nothing else. Back at the gate, the young Jetspan manager walked toward the girls. Hi, she said softly, kneeling beside them. I'm Maren Gillespie. I'm with corporate. Are you Aaliyah and Amira? They both nodded. I want to apologize. This never should have happened. Your father is on the phone with us now, and we're working to make it right. You'll be boarding shortly, okay? Aaliyah looked up at her. Are we in trouble? Maren's face broke just a little. No, sweetheart. Not even close. As she stood, she turned sharply to Reinhardt and Clay. Both of you, off this gate, now. Reinhardt opened her mouth, but Maren cut her off. You'll be hearing from HR. Go. Passengers nearby had their phones out now, recording. No one said anything, but everyone saw it. 2 black girls detained, questioned, and humiliated for trying to board a flight with everything they needed, until one phone call flipped the entire script. But Donovan didn't just leave his meeting. He activated something far bigger than the girls could have imagined. By the time the girls were led away from the bench and back toward the boarding lane, the atmosphere around gate B7 had changed completely. The energy was different now, more controlled, but tense, like something big had just happened that no one wanted to explain. Aaliyah clutched her phone tightly, still on the call with her dad. Amira walked quietly beside her, backpack straps twisted from all the fidgeting she'd done while sitting. They were quiet, but their eyes were wide open. Donovan's voice came through again. Girls, is someone with you now? Yes, Aaliyah said. Her name is Maren. She's from your company. Good. Stay with her. Maren Gillespie guided them gently to the side, not to the bench this time, but to a small desk near the jet bridge door. We're going to hold off boarding the plane for a few minutes, she said, just until I can speak with my team. That's when a man in a navy suit arrived, walking fast but composed. He was tall, bald, with reading glasses that hung from a chain around his neck. His badge read, Jonas Dewey, Regional Director, Passenger Services. Marin, he said, nodding once. These are the girls. Yes, this is Aaliyah and Amira Whitfield. Jonas crouched slightly to be eye level. I'm sorry about what happened. Your father is a man I know personally, and none of this should have happened to you. Do you feel okay right now? Aaliyah hesitated. I guess. Jonas stood. They'll board first when we resume. No one else. Let's get this handled now. Then, just like that, Jonas turned to the other staffers and snapped into command mode. I want Flight 3 once in scene, paused immediately. No new passengers boarding until I clear it. What should I tell the gate? Someone asked. Tell them corporate is handling it directly. Behind him, passengers started murmuring. A few had heard the girls' names mentioned by now. One woman whispered to her husband, Isn't their dad the new CEO or something? A man with a backpack leaned over. Yep, Whitfield. He just took over at Traverse a few months ago. I remember the press release. It didn't take long for the gate tension to ripple beyond the glass wall. On the tarmac, the flight crew received the delay notification. The captain, standing just outside the cockpit door, tapped his headset and asked, We've got a hold from who? Corporate, replied the gate dispatcher. The captain raised an eyebrow. Since when does corporate hold a gate in Des Moines? Back inside, Donovan had patched in another call, this time to the company's general counsel and a senior VP. They were all on a joint line now, trying to figure out how two young girls were questioned for simply being themselves. Donovan spoke low and firm, pacing in his office in Dallas. Was there a policy failure, he asked. No, said the general counsel. Every document was in order. This was personal judgment, improper, unauthorized, and now we have a public incident brewing. By then, Jonas had returned to the counter. His voice was louder now. I want video pulled from the last 30 minutes. I want audio from the gate agent's headset. If there's even one line that confirms they made that decision based on appearance, I want it on my desk tonight. He turned to a nearby supervisor. And call airport operations. I want to debrief with security in the next 30 minutes. The agents who had stopped the girls, Reinhardt and Clay, were no longer anywhere in sight. Rumors had already started flying. A passenger swore he saw Reinhardt crying while being escorted down a hallway. Another claimed Clay had left the airport entirely. Aaliyah and Amira still didn't fully understand the storm they had stepped into, but they could tell something big was happening. Are we still going to see Nana? Amira asked. Yes, Marin said softly, but we had to pause the flight to make sure everything's right. Not just for you, for everyone watching. The older man, Jonas, gave them a small smile before stepping away again. You're going to be the first two people on that plane, as soon as I clear the gate. From across the terminal, Donovan's voice came again. I'm proud of you both, he said. You stayed calm. You did exactly what you should have. I'm taking care of the rest. But this wasn't about just saving a flight. It was about confronting something much uglier. Upstairs, in a tucked-away conference room near Terminal B, Jonas Dewey stood at the head of a narrow table lined with screens, coffee cups, and two visibly shaken employees, Reinhardt and Clay. Security had escorted them there 15 minutes earlier without much explanation, just a stern instruction to wait for senior leadership. Jonas walked in without a word. He didn't sit. He closed the door behind him and folded his arms. I'm going to say this once, he began. This isn't a hearing. This is a review. And it's happening today, right now, because what happened down there didn't just delay a flight. It ignited a storm we might not be able to walk back from. He pointed toward the small screen on the wall, where paused footage of the gate looped in silence. Aaliyah and Amira were visible in the frame, sitting, waiting, confused. Every moment was time-stamped. Reinhardt broke first. They looked different, she said. It's not what we usually see with unaccompanied minors. Jonas blinked slowly. What does that mean exactly? Clay spoke next. No parents in sight, they didn't make eye contact, and they were nervous. Jonas turned the monitor toward them. They're 12. You're telling me two black girls in matching backpacks looked too nervous to fly, and that raised enough suspicion to call security, detain them, and ignore the documents they handed you? No one answered. He let the silence hang. That folder, Jonas said, had everything. Notarized permission letters, IDs, flight confirmations. The only thing missing was your basic common sense. Clay straightened up. I've seen trafficking cases. I've seen kids get coached on what to say. This wasn't that, Jonas snapped. You didn't log a report. You didn't follow protocol. You didn't even scan their paperwork before making that judgment. You just made a call based on instinct. And that instinct is a problem. Back at the gate, the girls were still waiting quietly. Their flight had been paused for nearly an hour. A new set of passengers was trickling in, all aware that something had happened, but most unsure of the details. Whispers circulated. CEO's kids. Some kind of discrimination thing. Security got involved. Meanwhile, Donovan remained on the phone. He had now shifted from corporate strategy to personal intervention. With every word, his voice lost a little of its usual polish. "This isn't just about my girls," he told the VP of legal. "It's about the fact that this happened on my watch. I've spent years pushing for better ground training, more sensitivity screening, and now this?" The line went quiet for a moment. "We're working on a statement," the VP said. "Don't," Donovan replied. "Not yet." Aaliyah glanced at her sister. "Do you think we're still in trouble?" "No," Amira whispered, "but I think they are." Downstairs, Marin was pacing slowly along the side of the gate while fielding back-to-back calls. "Yes, we're stabilizing the terminal now," she said to one executive. "And yes, the footage is being transferred to legal." She hung up, turned to the flight attendant waiting near the jet bridge, and gave the nod. "Prepare for boarding. We're starting with the Whitfield twins." Passengers stood up again, some applauding softly as Aaliyah and Amira walked toward the gate. No one stopped them this time. Back upstairs, Jonas reached a conclusion. "You're both suspended effective immediately," he told Clay and Reinhardt. "HR will be in touch. If either of you attempt to return to the floor today, security will escort you out." He turned to leave but paused at the door. "And one more thing," he said without turning around. "You didn't just cost us an hour and a half of operations. You reminded a lot of people that power talks louder than policy. That's not justice. It's damage control. And we're all going to live with it." He walked out, leaving the two employees alone. But security protocol wasn't enough to excuse what happened. Not anymore. By the time Flight 317 took off, the story was already moving faster than the aircraft. A TikTok clip, 34 seconds long, had gone viral. It showed Aaliyah and Amira sitting off to the side of Gate B7, backpacks at their feet, visibly confused, while a gate agent whispered to security. The caption read, "These two were denied boarding for looking off. Their dad, the CEO, watched this backfire." Within 2 hours, it had over 800,000 views. By dinner time, it was on the local news in Iowa and Indiana. By the next morning, CNN had picked it up. In the video, you could barely hear the dialogue, but that didn't matter. The imagery said enough. Two black girls, fully documented, stopped and questioned. Then suddenly, everything froze. Flights delayed, staff removed, and then the girls boarding first, quietly but visibly shaken. Donovan Whitfield hadn't planned to speak publicly. He hated the idea of his daughters being the center of a news cycle. But the moment the story hit national headlines, he realized he didn't have a choice. At 9:30 p.m. Central Time, he released a brief statement via his personal page. "My daughters were denied boarding today despite following every policy, presenting every required document, and answering every question. What happened wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a failure, one rooted in assumptions, not facts. I'm handling this internally, but I won't stay silent. Because if this can happen to my family, it can happen to yours too." He didn't say much, but the message spread like fire. By the next morning, hashtags were trending. Shachash, flying, while black, Jetspan, incident, Aaliyah, and Amira. It didn't take long for reporters to show up outside the Whitfield home in Ames and outside Jetspan's Dallas headquarters. Protesters held signs that read, "Would they have stopped them if they were white?" and "Fix your flight teams." Back in Des Moines, Marin sat in a small break room watching clips on her phone. She sipped cold coffee and scrolled through hundreds of comments, some supportive, some ugly, most demanding change. She put the phone down and exhaled. She'd only met the girls for 20 minutes, but she couldn't stop thinking about Amira's question. Are we in trouble? It haunted her. In Indianapolis, Aaliyah and Amira had finally arrived at their grandmother's house. It was late, close to midnight, and Nana was waiting on the porch in slippers and a housecoat. She hugged them tight, kissed their foreheads, and said nothing. They stayed up way too late, eating cookies and watching old movies. But even as the girls laughed, something had shifted in both of them. They kept glancing at their phones, not to scroll, just to check, like they were waiting for something else to happen. Meanwhile, Donovan's phone never stopped ringing. Civil rights attorneys, school administrators, TV producers, all wanting interviews, reactions, quotes. He ignored them all. Instead, he scheduled an internal Zoom call with every regional operations director in the company. Attendance wasn't optional. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't throw blame. He just told the story from his daughter's perspective. Slowly, methodically, pausing between each line as if daring anyone to look away. "You know what haunts me the most?" he said. "It's not that they got stopped. It's that they assumed they were in trouble. That's what stuck." In the silence that followed, nobody spoke. No one needed to. But while corporate scrambled to manage the storm, the girls were still processing what had happened in their own quiet way. They sat together in Nana's living room the next afternoon, looking at the blurry video clip of themselves circulating online. "That's us," Amira said. Aaliyah didn't reply. She was watching the faces of the people in the background. "We look scared," she said after a long pause. "Yeah," Amira whispered. "We were." But while the cameras focused on damage control, the real damage was still sitting quietly on a plastic bench, holding a stuffed bunny and trying not to cry. 3 days after the incident, the airline issued a formal statement. It was bland, cautious, and filled with phrases like "unfortunate event," "internal review," and "commitment to equity." It didn't name Aaliyah and Amira directly. It didn't apologize to them personally. It sounded distant. Donovan read it twice, then pushed his phone aside and stared out his office window. His daughters hadn't said much since returning from Indianapolis. They were quieter than usual, not withdrawn, but different. And he saw it every time they looked at a uniformed employee in public or hesitated before speaking up in a crowd. The damage wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, like something in them had been asked to shrink. That bothered him more than anything. Meanwhile, the pressure on Jetspan didn't fade. Internal emails leaked to the press, revealing that multiple employees had flagged issues around racial profiling over the past year. One former customer service agent, Lisa Hammond, gave an anonymous interview to a podcast claiming it was unspoken, but real. Certain kinds of passengers always got second-guessed. 2 days after that interview, Reinhardt resigned. Clay was placed on indefinite, unpaid leave, pending further investigation. Neither offered public comment. At headquarters, Donovan met privately with a group of Jetspan trainers and compliance officers. They talked about how bias creeps in, not through slurs or screaming matches, but in small decisions, silent assumptions, unchecked instincts. Sometimes it's not loud, Donovan said. It's the quiet choices. The way you glance at someone, or pause before scanning a document. That's where it starts. They spent 4 hours that day rewriting part of the unaccompanied minor policy. By the end of the meeting, 2 team members were in tears, not because they were ashamed, but because they had never been asked to consider how those micro-moments could add up. Still, none of it erased what had already happened. On a cloudy Saturday, Donovan picked up the girls from a friend's birthday party. They barely talked on the drive home. Then, out of nowhere, Amira said from the back seat, "I don't want to fly alone again." He looked at her through the rearview mirror. "You don't have to," he said. "But I want to," she added. "Just not like that." He nodded slowly. "We'll work on it. Together." That night, Donovan and his wife sat in the living room while the girls did homework at the kitchen table. He read through a stack of emails from senior leadership, PR advisors, and legal reps. One proposal suggested launching a new internal initiative to train all gate agents, complete with branding and a press event. He sighed. It wasn't about press. It was about trust. Later that week, Donovan met with an independent equity consultant, someone who had nothing to gain, no agenda, and no stake in corporate spin. They sat across from each other in a modest conference room. "You can change policy," the consultant said, "but changing behavior, that takes years. People have to see themselves differently before they treat others differently." Donovan didn't say anything for a moment. "I'm not sure my daughters can wait years," he finally said. "No one should have to." Meanwhile, Aaliyah had started journaling again, pages filled with questions she didn't say out loud. Would they have believed us if our skin was lighter? Why did no one help until Dad called? Do I have to act extra polite so people feel safe around me? Her mom found one of the pages by accident. She didn't mention it, but she sat with it for a long time. Later that month, Donovan made a quiet decision. He declined his extension as CEO. 6 months earlier, it had been his dream job. Now, it felt like a spotlight he didn't want anymore. Instead, he announced the launch of a nonprofit focused on bias training across transportation systems, airlines, subways, bus terminals, anywhere regular families pass through and face quiet judgment. He called it The Line Doesn't Lie. Aaliyah helped pick the name. She said it reminded her of all the times she watched adults skip past her in line, like she wasn't really there. Amira designed the logo, two children's silhouettes standing at a gate. None of it erased what happened, but it turned the spotlight in a different direction. But the question everyone kept asking wasn't about the punishment, it was about the possibility. What if Donovan hadn't picked up? The question never really left the room, even when the cameras did. What if Donovan had missed the call? What if Aaliyah had hesitated for just another minute? What if no one in that terminal had known who he was? It wasn't about power, it was about protection. And it wasn't lost on Donovan that most people in his daughter's shoes wouldn't have had that protection. In the weeks that followed, the family tried to return to something close to normal. Aaliyah went back to her robotics club. Amira rejoined her dance class, but both girls were seeing the world a little differently now. At school, classmates asked questions. Some didn't understand why it was such a big deal. Others whispered behind their backs, like being on the news made them somehow lucky. But none of it felt lucky. One night at dinner, Amira put down her fork and said, "I think we should tell the story ourselves." Donovan looked up. "What do you mean?" "Not a video," she said. "Not a TikTok, not for clicks. A real story, like an article or a letter." Aaliyah nodded, like something people can read and really get it, not just the headline. Donovan smiled, glancing at his wife. "You'd have to write it together. Take your time. Be honest." They did. It took a week of scribbles, tears, and voice memos. Their mom helped edit it. Their English teacher proofread it. And one Wednesday morning, it was published as a guest column in the Indianapolis Recorder, then picked up by USA Today. The headline read, "We're just kids, but they didn't see that," by Aaliyah and Amira Whitfield. In the piece, they talked about what it felt like to be questioned without reason, to be treated like a problem instead of a passenger. They didn't name names, they didn't attack, but they made something clear. If our dad hadn't answered, we'd probably still be sitting at that gate wondering what we did wrong. The article went viral in a quieter, deeper way. It wasn't just clicks this time. It was teachers sharing it with students, airport workers printing it and taping it in break rooms. Even a former TSA agent posted a video saying, "This made me think hard about how I show up every day." For Donovan, the article felt like a release, not a solution, but a start. He continued working with his nonprofit, speaking privately with other industry leaders about how things needed to shift, not just for PR, but for people. His last official act as CEO was simple. He signed off on a mandatory training module for every gate agent in the company, co-written by real families who'd experienced discrimination during travel. No PowerPoint slides, no fake scenarios, just stories. One line from the module came directly from the Twins article. "You don't have to know someone's story to treat them like they matter." That line stuck. Months passed. The media moved on. Other headlines took over, but the Whitfield family remembered, and they never stopped talking about it. Not because they couldn't let it go, but because they refused to let it be forgotten. Every time they traveled after that, Aaliyah and Amira walked with a little more awareness. They watched how other kids were treated at the gate. They paid attention to how quickly some people got through and how often others got stopped. But they didn't just watch. They spoke up. Once, in Milwaukee, they saw a teenage boy being pulled aside by security for no reason he could understand. Amira leaned over to her dad and whispered, "Do you think we should say something?" Donovan looked at them both. "You don't need to say much," he told them. "Just don't look away." The moral of their story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about power moves or public takedowns. It was about showing how quickly things can tilt in the wrong direction when judgment replaces policy, and how important it is to speak, even when it's uncomfortable. The truth is, anyone could have been in that terminal that day, but not everyone would have been believed, and that's the point. If this story made you feel something, don't scroll past. Talk about it, share it. Speak up when you see something wrong. Because silence doesn't protect anyone, but your voice might.